Good morning, everybody. Just quickly, we've come early this morning simply because while we are looking at the back end of some impala, if you look carefully to the sort of right-hand side of your screen, you can see a pride of lions that are causing consternation amongst this herd of impala, and we just thought that the shot of both of them in the same picture is just too wonderful to miss. Welcome to the Dawn Safari here in the northeastern corner of South Africa, the beautiful Kruger National Park. We're on the western fringes of it on a little gem called Djuma and Arathusa off to the west of us. About 1,500 hectares, 4,000 acres of wilderness wonderland that we are very privileged to call home. My name is James Henry. On camera today is Brian. Hello, Brian. As you see, the mere mention of Brian's name caused a scattering of the impala. And in the final control today, we have Rebecca on her second solo drive. Kirsten is there too. Not sure where Geraldine is this morning. And then on the other vehicle, Jamie being filmed by Jean-Andre the Foot Gerding. So, welcome to it. You are on a live safari, as I said to you. That means that you must and please do talk to us, ask us questions, give us your comments about what we're seeing. Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, questions at WildEarthTV, or chat to us on the YouTube chat stream. And that noise you can hear if you're perhaps a first-time viewer is the alarm calling of the impala. Let's just listen for a little while. Jamie's just calling me on the radio. I'm going to talk to her. Go ahead. Affirmative. So she's just asking, she's obviously not too far from here, Jamie, and she can hear the shouting impala, and she's just checking that they're shouting at these lions. Now, what they're going to do here, this is quite interesting, is they are within the flight distance, and the whole point of this, of course, is that they will be watching where the lions are and making sure that they see where all individuals in the pride are. So they'll be kind of looking around, approaching, checking, but they won't close within that flight distance. The flight distance, of course, is the distance at which they will run away from a potential predator. So they are not, sorry, I've said that they were within that distance. They're just outside it, and they'll stay outside it. Let's move a little bit forward. And while we do that, Deborah, armchair traveler, you say, woohoo, the Nkuhuma lions, and you hope that they killed last night. I don't know if they killed last night, Deborah, but I do know that they left their... what shall we say, their markings on quarantine clearings. Jamie drove here from Inga's house, which is sort of, we live over there at the DRC. Jamie lives over there at Inga's, and she said her drive over here was filled with a stink second to none. So the lions certainly were around quarantine. There were lots of wildebeest around there yesterday. So let's see if we can have a look at their bellies, and we'll decide if they had a meal last night or not. So far, I don't think that they did. And I know they were hungry. Maybe something small, maybe a small snack. We'll look for blood on their muzzles. We'll look for swollen bellies. What do you think, Brian? I don't think they ate anything.
No, I don't think
no. Yes, they look a little bit morose, to be honest. I think they're probably quite hungry still. Maybe they ate an impala. They certainly didn't devour anything very large, and I really hope that if they did kill, it wasn't one of those baby wildebeest. She looks like she's got a bit of a belly on her, but don't forget, everybody, that 2 or 3 of these lionesses have been mating with the Birmingham boys, and that means swollen bellies could mean little cubs. And that would be very exciting indeed. This pride took a hammering at the claws and teeth of the bad-tempered Birmingham gang when they arrived here a little while back. And let's hope that those numbers are being replaced soon by little cubs. Now, lions, of course, in the great tradition of lions, are lying flat on the ground in a carpet of tawny and golden fur, which, while it is a very attractive colour juxtaposed against the green, is, well, it's not as exciting as it might be if they were on the hunt for those impala or perhaps a zebra that walked past here. But this is what is going to happen, I think. They will have given up the hunt by now. As you can see, they are large. Well, you probably can't see that, but they are large. They're enormous. And if you're watching in the States, they're almost twice the size of a mountain lion or a cougar. So about 120 kilograms here, 260 pounds. And that makes hunting during the daytime, even in quite thick cover, very difficult. Their prey is largely diurnal and also very wily, so they've got excellent eyes and ears and noses, and these lions will find it very difficult to hunt once the light has broken. And as you can see, the morning is turning into very, very beautifully lit. There we have the sky. It was so gorgeously pink as we came out here, and it's now turning that subtle sort of yellow color, and we'll see how it changes with those clouds as the morning continues. And somebody asked the other day what my favorite time of the day was. Well, I'm just not sure that you can beat that little gem of time, that jewel of space, just before the sun pops up over the horizon. The doves calling, some starlings, some sparrows. Beautiful. Now, we were talking about the wildebeest, and Jamie has got some, but before we do that, we're just going to have a very sad goodbye to my old hat. There it is. It's all over. I have a new one. Slightly large for my small head, but anyway, there it is. Welcome, Mr. Hat. Let's go across to Jamie. She's got some wildebeest for you. I'll see you just now.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. I'm sure you'll all agree with me that the replacement of James's hat was something of a sad occasion. Not quite, however, as traumatic as the evening that these poor wildebeest probably experienced last night. Between the lions walking across quarantine, hunting, and the attentions or the constant attentions of the males, or the male, towards the females, I can't imagine that they've had a terribly good time of things. It was cloudy and windy last night. They must have been feeling absolutely terrified. I haven't managed to do a proper head count of all of our little wildebeest calves. I drove past a very pungent smell earlier, and I double and triple checked. I think most of the smell would be accounted for by a lion scat, which is always a little bit smelly, but I haven't discounted the possibility that those lions managed to catch a small animal, whether it be a wildebeest calf or an impala. Whoop. Either way, since we've settled down here and started watching on quarantine, these wildebeest calves have been having an absolute whale of a time, bounding about quarantine, playing with each other, chasing each other, flicking their heels up in the air, obviously rejoicing in the fact that they managed to survive to the morning. Who knew wildebeest could be so incredibly entertaining? And of course, off to the right there is one very dejected and rejected male. He still hasn't quite managed to succeed with the lovely ladies. He's put in a great deal of effort. It hasn't quite worked out for him. And thus he finds himself on the fringes, possibly reevaluating his technique in terms of wildebeest, what would we call it? Wildebeest mating habits, let's just put it that way. Looking terribly sad. Morning, Jax.
Morning, how are you?
Oh, good, and you? Hi, guys. Cheers. I think perhaps it's my imagination, but he does look terribly dejected. I was just saying good morning to Tax. And on that note, good morning to you all. My name is Jamie, and I have Jean-Andre on camera with me this morning. And we've got, fly landed right between my eyes. We've got all kinds of exciting things planned for you. James, of course, already having found the lions. I'm going to head up towards the hyena den and see what's happening there. But I just want to stay with this wildebeest herd a little bit longer, and I hope I can show you some of the games that they've been having. I might need to reposition, however, since at the moment all we've got is some dots of backsides moving across quarantine. Lovely to see this wildebeest herd back once again. Hopefully we'll get to spend a bit more time with them. Oopsie. I have totally got out of the habit of pressing the immobilizer on Rusty. I've been driving the other vehicle, Wendy, for the last 2.5 weeks. It's amazing how your muscle memory establishes itself that quickly. Mail. Just keeping an eye on the mail. I'm hoping he's going to go and make another attempt at speed dating. Let's pull up here for the moment and watch the habits of our impalas, who have been exceptionally entertaining. Now, Christina, you've been away for a couple of days and you're wondering if the impala have started rutting. Not fully. One male managed to yesterday while we were watching them around the females. He managed to collect an entire harem that he was then vigorously defending. Unfortunately for him, he was wasting his energy a bit because it's a bit too early. But Christina, if you have a look at these impala, they are already absolutely covered in ticks. It's incredible. We always talk about and flies actually as well. We always talk about the loss of condition that the male impala experience in the time that they start the rut versus 2 months later when they finish. But we're nearly there. You can see how the hormones are playing a role. It's actually quite funny to watch because they walk past each other, but constantly on edge, waiting for one of the males to have a go at them. Constantly squaring up to each other, constantly on alert. Yes, we're very close to watching them begin their rut. And Christina, we're also very close to seeing the wildebeest starting to rut as well. They will also be mating very soon. That's why I've been joking a little bit about the attentions of the male to this herd of females. Isn't it amazing how impala, when they spar like this, always pick out a suitably aged male to practice with? Oh! And there goes our male wildebeest cantering into the fray. Ladies, I have arrived. Stop. Stop right there. Casting his head backwards and forwards, looking for any lady luck. This bachelor herd of impala are very much without ladies, which is very typical of this time of year for impala. They'll split off into females with youngsters and then bachelor herds. And this time of year, they almost look as though they are tussling for the sake of it. But that, of course, is all important practice. Now, Sandblaster, you were just looking at commenting about the size difference of their horns. Of course, antelope have horns rather than antlers because they're a permanent feature on the top of their heads, made of bone rather than reinforced blood vessels as antlers are in deer. Oh, everybody is so jumpy this morning. You just can't trust anyone when you're wandering around in this bachelor herd. And yes, Sandblaster, you can actually age an impala by the growth of their horns. Since they are a permanent feature, they don't shed them once a year and then regrow. They will be there for the rest of their lives. It's only when an impala is about 4 years old, like the one that we were looking at there. In fact, the three that have just walked off your screen, these male impala are fully grown. The one that's just walking in front there is probably about 2 years old, maybe 2.5. So you can age them by the extent that the horns have grown and the shape that the horns have reached. It's only when they're 4 years old that they sort of complete their growth and get that full curve and twist to the back. And we've got a mixed bag here of different ages. I feel a certain sense of deja vu. This is exactly how I started my morning, yesterday morning, sitting with impala and wildebeest, watching their antics as they start to move up or move closer to their breeding season. A lot of what we're seeing on these antelope are flies and not ticks, but there are a few antelope with serious tick infestations here. And over the next few months, when a male does manage to acquire a female, he will not eat, he will not groom, he will not sleep, he will just fight, making them somewhat easy food for the animals that James has found for you this morning. On that subject, let's head back over to James and have a quick look at those lions.
Hi everybody. As you can see, not much has happened except that the two lionesses who had deigned to raise their heads for us have now put them down, and they are sleeping on the verdant greenery that is this clearing to the east of the Djuma Dam. So I don't think we're going to spend a great deal of time here. I don't think they're going to move much. And, well, you know, there's just quite a lot of the wilderness to explore. And so we'll sit here for a few more minutes, and if you've got any questions, send them through. Remember, hashtag Safari Live, questions at WildEarthTV, or the YouTube chat stream. That works pretty well. And we can have a quick chat about the Nkuhuma pride. Now, this is the pride that, for those of you who are new viewers, and I know there are quite a few over the last few days, this is the pride of lions that we see the most often. They provide the bulk of our lion viewing. And that's just because Djuma, where we do most of our driving, is basically the central part of their territory. Very nice question here from Deborah Armchair Traveller. As I was talking about the territorial behavior of these lions and the fact that this is the central part of their territory, Deborah, you want to know if they came across other lionesses, would they avoid conflict, or would there be some kind of physical confrontation? Deborah, by and large, animals out here will avoid physical contact because they can tell who's going to win, normally simply from size. But lions, of course, because they live in a pride, and much like hyenas, because they live in a pack or in a clan, are willing to take physical risks where leopards and cheetahs are absolutely not willing to take those risks. So the chances of a meeting of unrelated lionesses within their territory resulting in a physical confrontation are high. But what you'll normally find is that the invaders, if they were to come across the territorial owners, would turn around and run off pretty quickly. It's highly unlikely that a sort of female, high action here, one of them's lifted her head. It's highly unlikely that there would be sort of territorial takeover like there are with the male lions. That's a real kind of physical confrontation and definitely happens with males. Normally, this pride would only kind of lose this territory if they all died. And it's interesting, even if this pride was reduced to only one lioness, it's unlikely that the territory would be filled with other lionesses. It's only when there's a vacuum created that other lionesses would move into this area. Very nice question. Thank you, Deborah. They've smelled something on the wind. I must say, I smell a bit of a sort of animal. It could be buffalo, it could be wildebeest, something like that. And so for their very sensitive noses, they must be full up. And it is just interesting to note how, here we go, there's huge action. Now, you see, to me, her belly looks quite swollen underneath. And I wonder if she isn't pregnant. I mean, it's highly likely that she is. And won't it just be so exciting to see some little cubs? They don't look skinny, though, you know. They don't look, lions when they're hungry, they look very skinny. So maybe they had a small snack last night. They certainly don't look to be desperately in need of food by any stretch. And just to quickly finish what I was saying, you know, Djuma is the central part of their territories, but their territory extends quite a long way to the west of us, a very long way to the east of us, and their total territory probably covers, it's actually quite a small lion territory, it probably covers about 3,500 to 4,000 hectares, which is about 10,000 acres. And that for a lion pride, I'd say, is quite a small territory. The Styx lioness is about the same size, I suppose. They're to the south of us. And of course, the territory size is largely determined not by the other lions in the area, but by the amount that there is to eat. So it's a testament to the amount of prey available in the Sabi Sands that they have such small territories compared with, say, a Kalahari lion, which would have an enormous territory. Christine, very nice question. For those of you who don't know, we are involved with an NGO called Panthera. They do some extremely valuable cat research around the world. And Christine, you say, is there something equivalent for the lions? Christine, Panthera does all cats. So we mark all of our lion pride activity with Panthera. We log it all on a GPS system or GIS system. We don't collect their scats yet. They're not doing the lion scats at the moment. So no, we haven't done that sort of thing. But certainly we do contribute to Panthera's lion research as well. So Panthera is not only the leopards, they do all cats around the world. I think all the big cats. They have tiger projects going. They have, I think they've got the odd jaguar project going. And certainly the lions and leopards of the Sabi Sands form an enormous part of the research that they do. And you can go and check out what they do at panthera.org on the interweb, obviously. Brian, would you say that filming flat cats is your favorite activity in the world?
Best thing in the world.
So Brian, of course, has to become quite imaginative now in order to keep the picture moving. Now look at her swollen nipples. Look how swollen she is. There's no suckling there. There's definitely no suckling, but she's got very swollen nipples. Right, from those swollen teats, let's go across to Jamie. She's apparently got a magnificent view of the rapidly rising sun.
I have garnered a new appreciation for wildebeest over the last few months, and this morning light is absolutely emphasizing my rediscovery of them as an antelope species that I really enjoy. They look so beautiful as they go about their morning routine. And this autumnal light is also absolutely extraordinary. We've watched them accompanied by the odd contact call between the wildebeest calves. Whilst they are fully weaned, they are still calling to their mothers every now and again. Sort of a meh sound. Such highly entertaining animals. Look at them scratching on that apple leaf tree. Oh, just getting the right spot there. As they wander across the clearing, there's a very crisp, cool breeze that is blowing across towards us. And Matt was wondering, could I explain why there is always a drop in temperature at sunrise? And it's definitely something that I've experienced, and I'm not entirely sure what causes it. I mean, I know that with sunrise, a lot of the cloud cover burns away almost immediately. And of course, clouds can have a very insulating effect on the earth. They stop the heat that's coming up from the earth from escaping into the atmosphere. So that might be one explanation, Matt. I'm not entirely sure why it is, and if there's not also a sort of a psychosomatic, from a human's perspective, feeling that when the sun comes out, it's got to be a little bit warmer. But geographically, I'm not 100% sure why it is that we feel that drop in temperature as the sun comes up, but I have experienced it and I know exactly what you mean. For those of you who are more meteorologically, I'm not sure what the word is. Chandre's throwing his crutches about in amusement at my inability to pronounce words this morning. If anybody knows why we feel that drop in temperature first thing in the morning, please let me know. You can do that on #SafariLive on Twitter, or email through to questions@WildEarth.tv, or even on our YouTube chat stream. I'd love to know what it is exactly that causes the feeling of the drop in temperature first thing in the morning. Isn't this light just extraordinary? And with all of this green grass in quarantine, it is sights like this. It's such a pleasurable way to start the morning. Mouthfuls of grass. These animals bulking up as we enter into our dry season. They are making the absolute most of whatever food they manage to find. Look how big the calves have got. Just imagine the amount of, or the speed of that growth. You watch them being born at the beginning of the year, the start of the year, and they've almost reached the same heights as the adults. Now, the amount of resource sort of processing that has to occur, and also the incredible amount that the females put in providing that rich milk that allows them to grow at that speed, especially during a time of drought. In Gen B, perhaps I should have clarified a little bit better. I said that the calves are weaned. Some of them are not fully weaned. They're still suckling every now and again. I have seen them suckling. It looks totally bizarre because they have to sort of almost lean down onto their chests and lift their heads up in order to reach up to their moms. So that's why Gen B has observed that there are still some full udders amongst these wildebeest cows. Absolutely, and there are some wildebeest calves that are a little bit younger than others, and they are still suckling from their mothers every now and again. But that's going to stop very, very soon. I've also seen the odd impala lamb still suckling. So one or two of them still not fully independent from their mothers just yet. And watching them suckle as well is always an interesting experience, because they, like all mammals, or at least like most mammals out here, they stimulate the secretion of milk from their mothers, which in the case of wildebeest, they will headbutt their mothers. Sorry, I'm just listening to the Game Drive channel. They headbutt their mothers in order to stimulate that milk production. Mike's just calling in. I think he's found either a leopard or he's found tracks. And I just want to listen for 1 moment. Look at this extraordinary morning light. Mike, that's Weaver's Nest. Confirm you've got visual of that animal. Copy that. I would like to make my way there. Copy that, thank you. Okay. Morning is extraordinary, but it's time to go because Mike has found a leopard. An answer from Joel about our cooling effect of the sunrise. And Joel, thank you very much. He's sending his answer in all the way from New York. And Joel is telling me that it's when the energy that is radiated from the Earth then moves up into the atmosphere and escapes into the atmosphere, causing that cooling effect. So sort of similar what we discussed in terms of the effect of the cloud cover burning away, although it feels as though the clouds are gathering again since we've had our morning sunrise. But that's exactly, Joel's answer sort of provides exactly what we were thinking about in terms of the way in which things cool down, and I'm really feeling it now just driving along. And it's something that guests often make the mistake of assuming that Africa is hot and that their trips to Africa they will be constantly warm, and they forget about the wind chill factor of sitting on the back of an open vehicle. And I'm feeling it very, very clearly this morning just driving along. The wind chill probably drops the temperature by about, easily, depending on how fast you're going, I would say 3, 4, 5 degrees centigrade, which is about 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm on my way to a different big cat sighting, and who knows which leopard it is. I certainly don't. I'd love to know if any of you can guess. I guess it's Karula. That would be my guess, but we'll have to wait and see. And while I race across to my sighting, why don't you jump on the back and have a look at the biggest predator out here.
My goodness, everybody, you can't believe what we've been watching since you've been gone. Sure. The lioness in the middle there lifted her head and put it down again. It's been absolutely astounding stuff while you've been away. The lioness in the middle there is Amber Eyes. We noticed that because she opened her eyes briefly before closing them again and going into sweeter repose. As a result, I'm pretty sure now of a small meal last night. I think they would be much more active if they were particularly hungry now. And let's just to remind you, just before we left, you left us, we were looking at that lioness closest to us. She's got very swollen teeth indeed, and I think that probably means that there are some little cubs on the way. Quickly, Brian, to the left. One of them sat up. There we go. Oh, I nearly missed it. Oh, goodness gracious, another one's head's up. There's Amber Eyes. A question here from a name I'm struggling to hear, so I'm going to ask Rebecca to say it again more slowly, if you don't mind, Rebecca. M-Kiz. M-Kiz. Hello, M-Kiz. I'm not sure how you'd spell that. M-Kiz. You want to know about this lioness who is pregnant. When will she give birth? And would she perhaps wait until the summer months to give birth? M-Kiz, no, definitely won't wait. Lionesses are not A, seasonal breeders, and B, once she's pregnant, once the physiological process is in play, she cannot hold back or delay or bring forward the birthing of her youngsters. There are various legends around the world where you will hear of animals that are able to do this. The impala is the most famous in this particular area. It is not physically possible. Once a fetus is developing in the uterus, it is impossible for the lioness to then stop that development and, sort of hold off birth until favorable conditions. So I think that given that the gestation period is just over 3 months, and she's probably been pregnant for about 6 weeks, I would say, from the looks of that, I'd say we're looking at between I'd say 6 weeks. She may be a little bit further along than that. So perhaps we're looking at between a month and a half before she gives birth. Now remember, lions don't need to be seasonal breeders. And one of the main reasons for that is that the winter time is not necessarily a time of difficult hunting. Remember that the animals or the herbivores, their prey, are often quite weakened by the lack of grazing and browsing during the winter months. It's also a fact that they're coloured for the dry season. So if you see these lionesses walking through the green grass, they're very obvious. If you see them walking through the long, dry winter grass, they're not obvious at all. So I'm not sure that their hunting success is that much greater during the summer months than it is during the winter months. In fact, I'd say, it's probably about the same. Then if you go also into the summer months, the one advantage of the summer months, of course, is that there are little antelope around. There are small babies around, which of course are easier to catch than the big adults. But if you're a big lion like this, and a big pride of lions, and you're trying to A, feed a pride, and then B, feed your cubs, bigger prey like buffalo and large wildebeest and zebra are far more kind of what you're going for. And so although the winter months, at least the summer months, definitely favor things like leopards and perhaps, what else would it favor? It doesn't favor wild dogs or cheetah because they need to hunt in the clearings and the winter's better for that. So, yeah, that's why they're not seasonal. Now, Jeffrey, you're in Texas and you want to know about whether or not, this is quite interesting and I don't know the answer, you want to know if a lioness smelling another lioness's urine is able to tell that she's pregnant or not. I'm going to guess yes, Jeffrey, and I'll tell you why. In the urine, of course, will be traces of the hormones that are produced by the lioness. It's the same in any mammal, and a male, of course, can tell if a female is pregnant by smelling her urine and doing phlegmon or engaging in the phlegmon behavior, which is to lift the soft palate and open a tract into the organ of Jacobson, or the vemeronasal organ, which is an organ just below the brain and that helps to interpret smell and things like pheromones. So, more action there. So, Jeffrey, one of the hormones that is produced, if I'm not mistaken, in great profusion when a mammal is pregnant is progesterone. And I suspect quite strongly that a lioness would be able to pick up on that if she smelt another lioness's urine. Would that change her behavior? I don't know. I don't think so. You know, lionesses are not particularly egalitarian in their ways, so I'm not sure that it would necessarily change her behavior at all. But would she be able to tell that if she was pregnant? Would she be able to interpret that progesterone as her colleague being pregnant? I don't know. It's an interesting one. The Twitter handles are just too wonderful. Goober Waller. Goober Waller? I'd love to know where that comes from. I don't know what Goober Waller means. But Goober Waller, you want to know if the lion's estrus cycles are perhaps attached to the moon cycle. Goober Waller, no, they're almost certainly not, and that's because they're irregular. They are not regular like they are with humans. So whereas a human's estrus or ovulation cycle is almost exactly a calendar month of 28 days, not a calendar month, a lunar month of 28 days. With lions and with leopards, and in fact with just about all the carnivores out here, their estrus cycles are based on whether or not they have young at the time. So a lioness who loses her cubs will come into estrus almost immediately. If she then falls pregnant and has cubs, she will raise them, and then when they're about 2.5 years old, she'll come into estrus again. And that's basically the factors that will define when she comes into estrus and when she ovulates. New males in the area can also induce a sort of estrus cycle or an anestrus, which is a false estrus, but certainly I don't think that the moon has anything to do with it. Just scratching her tummy there, just a little bit itchy. You can see that the nipples on that lioness are not quite as swollen as the other one, but that said, they are quite pretty obvious. And if you look at Amber Eyes' nipples, which you can see now, they are not swollen at all. You can just see them peeping out from beneath that soft white fur of the belly. So maybe we have two pregnant lionesses here. And she doesn't seem to have any either, Brian, does she? No. So maybe two pregnancies, which would be marvellous. That could mean at least 6 cubs. And one thing that lions will do, of course, is cross-suckle their cubs, and that is unusual. There are very few animals that will do that. Lions are one of them. Hyenas will not. Elephants will do it if they have to. If the mother dies, then a calf can be adopted by another lactating female. But otherwise it is very unusual. You can just feel, I don't know if you can feel it, or you can probably hear it, and that then transfers a feeling to you perhaps. But as the sun has kind of broken through the trees to the east of us, so the doves have started to call. And it's just got a lot louder suddenly. And from Goober Waller we go to Brazil's yak. Brazil's yak, you want to know if they will use old den sites. I think that they probably will. And Brazil's yak, that's because den sites for lionesses are in fairly short supply. I'm just looking at what they're looking at. I can't see anything, but they're looking straight across the Djuma Dam into those clearings, so perhaps they've smelt or sensed a buffalo or a wildebeest or an impala coming down to drink unawares. They're still quite a long way away, though. Brazil's yak, a lioness will give birth in a bit like a leopard, in an overhang, or find a little cave somewhere in a sort of dry stream, even in some very thick bush next to a river. normally next to a riverbed. And because the space required for something like that is in fairly short supply in an area like this, I think you'll find that they will often use the same den sites. So unlike a hyena, which can excavate a termite mound that has been opened up by an aardvark, same goes for a wild dog. The leopards and lions are not known for their digging ability, and of course if you're the size of a lioness, then you need a fairly large cave. Rocky outcrops are also another favourite, so there are none on Djuma or on Arathusa, but if you go south of us, there's a line of granite outcrops that stretches all the way from Ulusaba in the far west of the Sabi Sands, and then all the way into Mala Mala, which is just to the south of us. And you'll find there lots of pretty nice rocky overhangs and outcrops where a lioness might be able to give birth, and the leopard also. Very tired, you can see. So Tammy, a very nice question. You're in Seattle. What have they seen? What have they seen and how are they talking to each other is the question. They're all up now. Tammy, I will get back to your question. It's just another vehicle coming in. Tammy, sorry, I'm just quickly looking at something here. Right. No, nothing of great import. Tammy, I'm afraid I've forgotten your question. I'm going to ask Rebecca to read it through to me again. Yes. What is the greatest number of cubs that a lioness can have, and what's the greatest number I've ever seen survive? Well, Tammy, I think much like with the leopard, it's not impossible that a lioness could have up to 6 cubs, and possibly even more in captivity, but to make 6 survive would be nigh on impossible. I've seen 4 raised almost to adulthood, and then they were kind of taken out by a coalition of males that came in. And so, 4 is round about the maximum number in a pride. It's not impossible that they could raise slightly more than that, but I think 2 and 3 each is going to be the best number for the greatest chances of survival. So if the 2 of them produce 2 and 3 cubs each, it's likely that 2 and 3 can survive to adulthood, but greater than that, the chances reduce remarkably, especially if there is only 1 lactating female. So if one of them produces 4 and the other produces 3, the fact that there are 2 lactating females will spread the load of the feeding, and that will make a difference. It's an interesting observation here from Lucy in Indiana, who says that the lionesses who seem to be pregnant seem to be breathing a lot faster than the others. Lucy, I'm watching 2 now. Yeah, I have to agree with you. You say, is there a possibility that they're breathing faster because they're pregnant? I imagine it probably is, Lucy. I don't know. I'm sure their oxygen requirements are higher. Their physiologies are obviously moving, or their metabolic rate is going to definitely be higher because they are not supporting just themselves. So yes, it's quite possible that the breathing could be increased because they're pregnant. And certainly, as soon as that one lioness stood up, she looked pretty skinny, and I think that, if they did eat last night, it was something very small. It's so nice to see them interact with each other like this, and so really does juxtapose their behavior with their behavior at a kill, where they slash at each other and bite each other and hit each other on the face. That's sweet. Oh. Now, some of you are watching this from two angles, one of which is the dam cam, which is about 200 meters across the other side of the dam, so you can see onto us and perhaps onto the lions. And you notice that Brian and I are not alone on the vehicle today. Oh no. With us we have Sam Chevalier, who's just landed from Paris. No, he hasn't really. He's just landed from Cape Town, and he is, as many of you will know, our new presenter. And he's just taking a couple of notes. I don't know what on earth he's taking notes about, especially if I'm speaking, but he is writing a few things down, and he will introduce himself to you this afternoon. He'll take his first drive. We're going to ease him into things, I think, over the next week or so, and just let him settle in. I know when Brent and Jamie and I started, and Scott to a certain extent, there was kind of a desperate need for presenters, and so we arrived, put our bags down, and were immediately driving. Now, we're not in the same position with Sam, so rather than shock him into the system like happened with the rest of us, we'll let him gently ease his way in. So I will ask you to kindly welcome him and ask him very pleasant questions this afternoon, and let's ease him in to what has certainly been the best job I've ever had. The lionesses, I think they are pretty hungry, you know. I was just saying I thought they had maybe had something small, and so they were satisfied. But every time a little scent on the wind touches their noses of perhaps something delicious to eat for breakfast, they lift their heads. But of course, any herbivore worth its salt is going to be able to see them a mile off. They're lying right in the open. It's great to see them play like this. There's white bellies. And you can see, I mean, the color that they are is ideally suited not for this time of the year, but for the winter. Julianne, you want to know if lions are soft to the touch? Well, you know, I'd love to go and find out for you, but I think it might result in my becoming their breakfast, so I don't think I will. I will tell you that I have touched both a dead and a darted lioness, and yeah, it's not wiry, but it's not quite as soft as you might think it is. It is pretty hard, and their belly hair is as soft as it looks. But their top fur and the fur on their heads is quite, I suppose it would be like not like a Labrador, it would be a bit like I don't know if you've ever touched a Ridgeback or some short-haired dog like that. It feels a bit like that, maybe even slightly harder even. But their belly hair is very soft. Remember that everything about a lion, though, is actually quite hard. Their tongues, that sandpaper-like tongue, is capable of licking the fur off a prey animal. Their claws are obviously immensely long and very sharp. The muscles that they have are incredibly powerful. And so where your house cat is a soft and fluffy and cuddly thing, a lion is just... even though they look pretty cuddly doing what they're doing now, they're hard. They move around all the time. They don't move around all the time, but they are designed for very kind of physically difficult lives. So they take an enormous hit every time they hunt. And then when they jump on a zebra, they will often take a kick, or the zebra will land on top of them, or the wildebeest will land on top of them. And they have to be built to take those enormous kind of physical traumas. And so they're hard. Again, another name I'm struggling to hear. Is it, Brian, did you get Guess Verion? Guess Verion. Hello, Guess Verion. We've had Uber Waller. And Guess Verion. Yeah, Guess Verion. Very, very valid question. To what extent are lions able to discern human beings from the vehicles in which they are sitting? Yes, Verion, it's an interesting one that I'm not sure anybody truly understands. And that is because we know that lions can see human beings. When we're on foot, we know that they react to us in a very specific way. If we were to walk along here, these lionesses would stand up. I've walked into these lionesses before. They'd look, and then they'd back off. They'd go and find some cover to get away from us because they see us as a predator. Now, we also know that they see the vehicles as no kind of threat at all. So the immediate thought is to think, well, then they're not seeing the human being on the vehicle because they don't run away from us and they don't react to us. But a very good naturalist I know once said to me, how can we think that that's possibly true when a lioness is able to discern an impala's ear behind a tree? You know, they've got exceptional sight. So how they don't see us on the vehicles is difficult to understand. Now, maybe what it is that they just don't see us as a threat because they don't associate the vehicles and us as a threat. We're also not standing up, we're not bipedal while we're sitting in the vehicles, and that would also definitely have something to do with it. So if we were to all stand up on the back of the vehicle, and there's a Cheetah Plains vehicle here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people on it, if they were to all stand up straight away, then I think you might find that the lions would react, but certainly still not in the same way that they would to us approaching them on foot. So it's a complicated one, and I'm not sure that we fully understand what it is. The other thing about the vehicles, of course, is that they don't smell like human. To a lioness, they must smell like brake fluid and steering fluid and petrol and, of course, rubber and various other greases and things that a vehicle smells of. So they're not picking up human scent. But that said, if the wind does blow from behind us, they will often just lift their heads, especially animals like buffalo will react when they smell human being. So I hope that's a satisfactory answer. It's definitely not a very definite one, but it does give you an idea of what's going on with these lions. So I think we're probably going to leave the lions now, let them snooze it up for the morning, and we'll head across to Jamie while we'll do that, and we'll decide on our next plan of action.
Unfortunately, it seems as though Karula has managed to escape us all. She's ducked into the drainage line system around Twin Dams, and this vegetation is unbelievably dense in this particular area. It's one of her favorite spots. At the moment I'm trying to watch and I'm trying to show you guys the blue waxbill that is nest building, and I can still see it. Try go forward and don't. These little blue waxbills are such difficult birds. Can you see them bobbing about on the top of that fallen tree there, Jean? Perfect, thank you. Look at him. What on earth is that doing? Bobbing up and down like that. I can't quite work this one out. Some kind of display to a female to say, look what nest building material I found? Or is he trying to shake the seeds off the grass? Surely he could just pluck them off. I have absolutely no idea what this bird is doing. Look at him. He's bouncing up and down on this branch. I've got no idea. Must be some kind of display. He's been carrying that stem or that inflorescence of that grass for a while now. I've been watching him. I've been sitting here just listening for alarm calls in the hope that Karula might decide to wander through in this direction. I've been completely distracted now. Doing a little jig. Is he stuck? Can't be stuck, surely. I have seen, that being said, blue waxbills are very, very tiny, light little birds, and I have seen one stuck in a spider web before. It didn't last very long. It did manage to get out relatively quickly. It was stuck in a golden orb spider web, which has phenomenal tensile strength. But I don't quite understand what this little bird is doing. Just clutching this piece of grass. I want to just watch. I want to see if it goes and starts building a nest. They like to build nests in thorny trees. Something like a buffalo thorn or a knob thorn. It looks like he's currently sitting in a dead, or on the branch of a dead knob thorn. Earth. Shaking his head about. And he would much prefer to nest in a live knob thorn. Something with foliage to protect it. There's another one at the bottom. It's fascinating to witness. Such beautiful little blue birds. I wonder if that's not the female at the bottom. It can be very difficult to tell the difference between male and female blue waxbills. The males are slightly more vivid in their colouring, which makes me think that possibly the one at the bottom is a female. And I think, Jane B, I think you're right. I think he's trying to entice the lady, or that it is playing some kind of courtship role. Not that she seems terribly interested in whatever he's doing, but just that whole motion doesn't seem to make sense in any other context except perhaps he's showing off. That's all I can think that he's doing. He's saying, look what I got, look how clever I am, look what a good provider I am. It's the only explanation that I can offer for this behavior. An elephant calling in the background. Where's that lady gone? Oh, there she is on the right. Pretty certain she's a female. Yes, Jen B. I think that might be the case. You can see the buff stomach. She's not blue all the way through. Oh, up she goes. Sorry. Oh, yep. He's going to follow her. Okay, that makes more sense now. That must have been what he was doing for some reason. Grey hornbill just flew past us. And Karula hasn't popped out here despite my best hopes and wishes. So let's drive around and back to where she was last seen. See if we can't figure out exactly where she's gone. There's always the possibility that she's on her way back towards the cubs. She was moving south, which is in the right general direction, and she does like to use, she walks a direct line along this road and then past Treehouse Dam and back towards her den site. So that is a possibility, but I think that she would have popped out by now if that's what she was doing. She's probably hunting in these thick vegetation areas. That little time spent with the blue waxbills just goes to show that they are still in the process of courting, even though it's very, very late in our summer. Now, they're a little bird that we will see all year round, but Joey, you were wondering whether the non-migrant birds or the migratory birds have started their migration back up to the north. And the answer is yes, they have. Most of the species have started moving off. The cuckoos are gone for the most part. The woodlands kingfisher, I'm sure you've noticed, those of you who've been watching the Djuma Dam camera regularly, and over the last few months you would have heard the chirp, chirp call of the woodlands kingfisher almost constantly whilst watching. You must have noticed that that has completely disappeared. Our warbirds, it seems, they are one of the last ones to leave. They're still around. And some European bee-eaters are still around as well, but they're also looking as though they're on their way. I haven't seen a European roller in a couple of days. What else is headed off on its mission? I haven't seen any steppe buzzards or steppe eagles for a while as well, although we don't see them all that commonly on our live safaris. But they've probably started flying north. The white storks also on their way. So yes, a lot of the birds have started their migration, and it actually happened, I don't know if the migration occurred earlier, but a lot of those bird species disappeared sooner than expected this year from at least Djuma and the Sabi Sands, and that I think is entirely in response to the drought. Hardly saw or heard any cuckoos during our summer, and I think that that is probably a product of the fact that there just weren't, the insect load just wasn't high enough. Franklin's shouting away, but that's not an alarm call, that's a contact call between different groups of crested franklin. So they're not calling in response to Karula. The last time she was seen was just split seconds before I arrived, walking down towards this drainage line, towards this dip. A drainage line, for those of you unfamiliar with our terminology, is a sort of a river system, essentially. It's dry for most of the year, and it, as its name suggests, acts as a drainage area for water in on the surrounding crests. So that's what a drainage line is. It's like a non-flowing river. They do occasionally flow when there's a lot of rain, but for the most part it's dry. All right, Karula. Fair enough, well played. Disappearing into the densest block that we have. To continue on our subject of the bird discussion, Tammy, you were wondering with the birds, and I presume specifically with the blue waxbill, whether the males are more brightly coloured and prettier than the females. Knowing Karula, she could also have disappeared that way and pop up that way. It's just the kind of thing that she does. She has a way of doing that. Sorry, Tammy, I will get to you in a moment. For the most part, yes. With almost all bird species, the males tend to be slightly more vivid in colour, with very limited exceptions. Usually the females, particularly of those tiny seed-eating passerines, the females are a lot more drab, if I could describe it that way, and it's sort of similar to our argument about why the kudu males have horns but the females don't. So the bright colours of the males are a reproductive advantage. It's their ways of saying, look at how fit and healthy I am, fit and healthy and beautiful. Whereas with the females, they don't need to sort of compete for access to mates. They'll be able to pick and choose their mates. And therefore that bright coloration would be more of a disadvantage than anything else, and it pays off to be a bit more drab coloured, a bit more subtle, as a way of staying hidden away from predators. So the reason I compared that to the kudu is that the male kudus need horns to compete with each other for access to the females, but the females don't. And in fact, the horns are almost a hindrance to them in the thick vegetation that they live in. so they simply don't have them. They'd rather hide away. The same goes for a lot of the bird species. A couple of exceptions, within the African jacana, and I'm going to just duck under these trees here, and then I'm going to go and sit and turn off my engine and just listen for alarm calls. And I'll show you the pictures of some of the birds where the females display slightly more coloration than the females. And of course there's exceptions to that as well. For example, lilac-breasted rollers. The females and the males equally beautifully coloured. Okay, let's just take a quick stop here. Take the opportunity to double check for Karina. There's a nice bird for us to look at since we're busy chatting about them. It's sitting on top of that dead tree there. A red-backed shrike, actually. So there we go, Joey. Not all of our migratory birds have left. Red-backed shrikes are a migratory species. Let me just look up jacana for you. This is a lovely spot to stop for birds as well. Lots of them moving about. There we go. It doesn't as clearly demonstrate as I would like, but in the females of the African jacana, that blue actually shines through. To me, you can very clearly see which is a female and which is a male. The blue just is that much brighter. And that's because the female jacana has a very, very interesting mating technique where she will approach a male, she'll mate with him, and then she'll lay her eggs and then she leaves. And he raises her chicks for her, or their chicks for them, and she moves on to the next male. So a very, very interesting technique in terms of reproductive strategy with birds. And there's one more thing I just wanted to look up in answer to this question. I've just forgotten how the alphabet works. My new bird book finally acquiring a proper bird book look, starting to look that little bit tatty. So the blue waxbill, I mentioned that it's quite difficult to tell the difference at first glance, but you can see, we saw on that female that the blue didn't extend all the way down to the body. So particularly with the blue waxbill, you can really see the difference, the startling difference. The male's much more vivid. Very, very bright in colour. And the same goes for a lot of the waxbill members. For example, the violet-eared waxbill. And I'd be really excited if we saw a violet-eared waxbill here. We could. I just haven't managed to see one yet, and I certainly haven't managed to get one on camera. But the same applies. Males very, very brightly coloured, far more so than the females. Runa. All right. Let's continue. Sir William of Pennylot. It is quite a grand name you have there, Sir William. Sir William is watching in Australia and would like to know if we have any parrots. And the answer is yes, we do. We have a couple of different parrot species, but the only one that you will probably see in this area is the brown-headed parrot. We don't have any of the larger species of parrot, like, for example, the African grey. Those are found further to the north in sort of Central Africa. But we do have brown-headed parrots. We have a parrot known as a Mayer's parrot, and there's also the grey-headed parrot. So bright, vividly green, probably about the size of a parakeet would be my rough comparison scale for you. They're quite small for the parrot family, roughly that big. And very much in resident around trees with lots of fruit in them. They like the densely vegetated areas. We could even see one as we drive down this road. I've often heard them along this particular stretch. They are around here somewhere. I'm gonna make my way towards Treehouse Dam, see if I can't catch up with Karula on the move. In the meantime, let's head back across to James and his cats that are very much not on the move.
Well, we haven't moved much, everybody. In fact, we haven't moved at all. Brian has moved the camera with great excitement. He pointed it at the sun, maxed out the ND filters, and is now back on the lions, who keep looking up every so often to see if they can't perhaps encourage an impala to come close by so that they might eat it. Now, what we're going to look at now quickly is Amber Eyes, and that's her there, where Brian is zooming now. And it looks as though she's kind of made a mistake with her lipstick this morning, but there's a sort of orange mark that stretches up over her nose and a cut above her right eye, so the left eye as you look at it. And that's just an indication that she's been in some kind of conflict. I suspect with other lions. I suspect maybe over a very small piece of prey that they ate last night. Those look like fairly fresh wounds to me. Of course, many of you saw these lions yesterday and perhaps can tell me whether those injuries are new or whether they came as a result of a scrap over some scraps last night. You like the way I did that, Brian?
That was amazing.
A scrap over some scraps, yeah. I thought it was pretty impressive myself, yeah.
You should write a book.
I should. And every so often behind us, still the impala alarm call. One or two of them just look up and remember that the lions are here and go, pfft, pfft. But the rest have not worried. That's because these lionesses are lying out in the open. I must confess, I think it's a very strange place for them to be. They could be lying in a thicket, and that way if something did pop past, they'd be able to eat it. I guess they're also kind of using us as cover a little bit. You know, they're looking basically around us and underneath the vehicle over across to the clearing where the Djuma Dam cam is. Hello, Simon. A very nice question about whether or not you do get maned female lions, and you make reference to Mamoriri, the maned lioness of the Okavango, I think she is. I have heard of her, Simon. I don't believe I've seen a picture of her. It does happen from time to time that a lioness will get a scraggly mane, in the same way that sometimes you might find a bearded lady. Not something that wants to be encouraged, I don't feel, but yes, I have met bearded women, and in the same way, one does every so often find a bearded lioness. They don't get manes that are big, very full, so for those of you who haven't seen pictures of a maned lioness, they won't get a great big black mane like a big male will, but sometimes they have a high testosterone level, and that high testosterone level can result in what we call secondary sexual characteristics. So that'll be the development of extra muscle, it will be the development of hair, where a male lion would normally have hair. I think you'll find also a maned lioness would probably be a little bit larger than the standard issue maneless, very feminine looking lioness like these ones are. So it's just lovely to be with them for a while. I know I'm being fairly sarcastic about their inability to do anything useful during the day, but you know, we haven't spent a lot of time around them of late, because their territory does extend outside of where we operate. And so it's just great to sit with them this glorious morning, beautiful light, lovely bird song, and Africa's premier, one of the most iconic animals the world over. And I was just doing a bit of reading about them. You know that this animal used to be, 10,000 years ago, the most widely spread land mammal in the world after human beings. Just let me say that again. The most widely spread land mammal in the world after human beings. They stretched throughout Eurasia, across the Bering Strait. They were found in the Americas. They are obviously long since extinct in the Americas. They went extinct latterly in Eurasia. Obviously, they were in that we know that the Romans used them in their gladiatorial contests, and we know that they are represented in cultures throughout the world, especially in heraldry. I mean, they appear on flags, they appear in cave paintings, those French caves of Lascaux and I think it's Chauvet. There are paintings of lions there, and now they are isolated. Just two little patches of protected areas in Africa and the Gir forest in India. Those are the only place that you will find wild lions. And while some of the other big cats, like leopards, will survive outside of protected areas because they're inconspicuous and able to stay out of the way, the same cannot be said for the big lions. Now, something interesting going on here. There's some impala there where the lioness that's standing up is looking. There's some impala coming through the thickets that the lions are not hiding from, but I don't believe the impala have seen them, simply because they are not alarm calling. Now, that lioness just snuck behind that little silver cluster leaf bush there, but they're not being very serious about hunting. She's going off to find some cover, which if she wanted to eat, she would have done some time ago. Let me just get into position in case a great chase ensues. It's so funny how cats and dogs, much like humans, will stretch when they stand up. And I don't believe it's simply for comfort. I'm pretty sure in the same way that it's a good idea for us to have a bit of a stretch before we exert ourselves physically, they do it in order to loosen the joints and make sure that there isn't an injury should they suddenly have to take off at high speed. Just looking into the bush there, there's nothing serious about what's going on here though. Christopher, obviously the comparisons between domestic cats and the wild cats here are impossible not to make, because despite the fact that a lioness is 20 times the size of a domestic cat, their behaviors are so similar. And you want to know if a lioness will need. So for those of you who don't know what that means, if you've got a domestic cat, when they sit on you and they kind of stick their claws in and they just sort of soften where they're going to lie down, do lionesses do that? Christopher, I've actually not seen them do that. Brian, have you seen them do it? I'm not sure that they do, and I haven't seen leopards doing it either. They certainly will are not fussy about where they lie down. They don't sort of turn around like a dog does and check where they're going to lie. They just, when they decide they're going to lie down, they stop moving and fall over. So I don't think they do that kneading. They certainly sharpen their claws in the same way that a domestic cat will use a piece of furniture to sharpen its claws. So a lioness will often use a tree or a stump to sharpen her claws. So it's quite interesting. I'm just going to re-angle the vehicle slightly, see if it still starts. There we go, well done, Wendy. Let's just get into a position where we can see them all. High action going on here, as you can see. Now, watch as they go down to sleep. one time that they don't, they'll probably start moving in extended marathon session here. But you'll see, Christopher, no kneading, some stretching, bit of claw sharpening, and then straight down. So she used the termite mound there. She gripped into the termite mound, had a bit of a stretch. Just a flop over and down. And although lions, of course, are the most, well, in theory, terrifying predators that we have out here, being around them when they're like this is a tremendously peaceful experience, because they are completely at peace. They're relatively satisfied. I'm sure they're quite hungry, but they're not desperately so. And they're just enjoying each other's company. And of course, the other thing a lion likes to do is lie on its head. On its friend's head, I mean. Tammy, another one from you in Seattle. While we move, let's move a little bit. You say you want to know, you saw the lionesses cleaning the ticks and the flies off each other, and do they get some kind of nutritional value from doing this? Tammy, I would say almost certainly not. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of nutrition in a tick, but I think you'll find that they probably do spit them out sometimes. But there'd be so little, they'd be so small that it would have almost no effect on their physiology. It's purely for social grooming, which provides a bond, or reaffirms the social bonds and the pride. It's quite nice here, of course, is that we've got all the lions, and then we've got a buffalo, or the remains of a buffalo that they killed some time back. Same pride killed this buffalo. It's dead. See that, Brian?
A little bit.
Yeah. It's not alive anymore.
Did you drive over the landmine?
Do you think I did?
Maybe.
Oh dear. Brian can smell the truly offensive stink of lion dung, and he thinks I may have driven over some. I can't smell it yet, thank goodness. Have you found some? Sorry, I missed that one, Rebecca, again. Safari Diva, something about lion's digestion. I was considering the appalling stink of lion poo, and I was unable to think. Safari Diva, your question, as far as I understand it, I did hear it right the first time, is do lions encourage their cubs' digestion? I don't think I'm understanding it. I think Brian is looking as deeply as confused as I feel. Maybe if you could ask it in a different way, I might be able to answer it, Safari Diva. I'm not sure what you're asking, I'm afraid. There's quite interesting, as was pointed out to us, of course, there does seem to be some increased breathing rate in the females that are perhaps pregnant. I don't think that one is. There, she's breathing quite heavily. It might be that she just ate more of the food that they caught last night, if they did catch anything, but I think that the thought that she's breathing heavily because she's pregnant is probably quite a good one. Here comes the last remaining lioness, and I think once she comes over this way and lies down, we'll probably push on and see what else we can find. Oh, Michael, you're 13 years old, and it's a very astute question you've asked, and it's a good one for this pride. You want to know if lions can have different coloured eyes, or if they all have the same colour eyes. Well, until very recently, I would have said yes, they all do have the same colour eyes, and that's the eye colour that you can see there, which is a sort of pale yellowy green. But there is a lioness in this pride who has got amber-coloured or orange eyes, and she's the slightly injured one. I'm going to move a little bit forward, and I'll see if we can't show you that, Michael. This car is not long for this world, I fear me. So there you go, Michael. This female that we're closest to now is... As she closes her eyes, she has got orange eyes, and because of that we call her amber eyes. You can see the cut quite clearly there above her eye, and also the sort of cut on her nose. I'm going to do something fairly unethical and click my fingers and see if she won't open her eyes for you. I'm not going to do more than that, though. There we go. Quickly, Michael. Look, 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 Michael. There you go. You can see that they're slightly orange or amber coloured. I always used to tell my guests, please don't click or make noises at the lions to make them look at you so that you can get a good photograph. And I've now just done exactly that. Anyway, I don't think it disturbed her too much. I think she'll be okay. Especially if it meant a young naturalist got a little bit of satisfaction out of this. Of course, our young naturalists are going to be the champions of the wilderness going forward. And my goodness, the wilderness needs a lot of champions. It is under constant threat from us human beings. Look at those flies there in that wound. So, Safari Diva, you say that cats, young cats, or house cats need their kittens' bellies in order to encourage digestion, and you want to know if lionesses do the same thing. Safari Diva, not that I've ever seen, no. It's not impossible, but I certainly haven't seen that at all. That's quite interesting. Thanks for that. Thanks for clearing it up. I think the reason I couldn't answer you is that I had no idea what you were talking about. I've never seen that before. That's fascinating. Thank you. They might do quite a lot of licking of their bellies, I suppose. Maybe they do a bit of kneading as well, but I've certainly not seen it before. It has been some time, of course, that since I've spent a lot of time with young lions. We had those Styx cubs before they were unfortunately removed from this mortal coil by the Birmingham boys. But before that, it had been some time still. So it will be wonderful if these two lionesses produce their babies and spend the majority of their time here on Djuma. Hello, Cat in Tampa. Another great question about the kind of egalitarian nature of lion society. And you want to know if the rest of the lionesses will go off and hunt for the female who's giving birth and looking after her cubs. The answer is, there ain't no honor amongst thieves. These lionesses are profoundly excellent scavengers, but they're not very nice to each other. When one of them goes off to give birth, she's on her own. She will have to either hunt for herself or join the pride on the hunt and then eat, and otherwise she's not going to... What is that? Elephants. I can hear some elephants off to the northern side of the vehicle here. We'll go and have a look now as soon as we've finished this. So Cat, basically, no, they won't hunt for her while she's having her babies. She'll have to look after herself. And that's just the way it works with Lion Society. Okay, let's head across to Jamie, get an update from her. It is elephants. They're coming this way, but they're quite a distance off now. Let's go across and get an update from Jamie. We'll see if we can find those elephants.
My current update is that I'm sitting in the middle of a drainage line, so this river system I've kept talking about, listening, waiting, listening, just trying to see if I can figure out where Karuna has gone and what she's been up to. The reason I stopped here was just because Jean-Andre picked up on a sound somewhere in the block where she disappeared off to, but it is a sound that hasn't been repeated. I suspect there's elephants in there. Their tracks are all over the show, as is fresh dung. It could be them making a noise. There's definitely buffalo in there as well. However, the only thing I've managed to find on my travels to show you, which is actually still very, very nice, and it's a particularly nice example, is a porcupine quill. And it's a really nice long one as well. It's one of their, they of course come in different sizes, and it's one of the longest ones that's been shed. They shed them just like we shed hair, or like fingernails sometimes break off. Just have a look at how sharp that point is. This is one of their main weapons of defense. Oh, it's very sharp. And this is slightly barbed. So once it has embedded itself in an animal, very, very tricky for that animal to then get it out. Contrary to popular belief, porcupines can't shoot quills. So they can't sort of aim their backsides at an attacker and then fire the quills at will, like a spear. They actually have to, basically what they'll do is they'll raise their quills, just like an animal raises its fur when it feels threatened in some way, and then they'll do short backwards charges. So basically rushing bottom first towards whatever particular threat happens to present itself. And then they've got these longer quills for the sort of the first line of defense, and then they've got much shorter, much thicker quills. And Deborah, absolutely, this is one of the longest quills that you will see from a porcupine. And as I said, different lengths apply to different things. Just trying to work out what is on here. Is that far enough away there, Jean-Andre? Perfect. I mean, it looks like it's just mud, so it could well just be mud, or it might have been something that's come from the porcupine itself. When you look at them really closely like this, they're very ridged and edged. You can see fine lines running all the way up them, and they are essentially just hollowed out substances similar to fingernails, constructed of keratin. I'm fascinated by the fact I still haven't seen a porcupine since I arrived on Djuma a couple of months ago. I'm still waiting for the opportunity to see one. I've seen plenty of signs for them, tracks, quills, but I just haven't managed to see the animal itself. And it's a pity because it is fascinating. Interestingly enough, the porcupine belongs to the rodent family, and it is in fact South Africa's largest rodent and one of the largest members of the rodent family completely, the largest of course being the capybara. Porcupines mate